Meeting of the Waynesboro. This is in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. I'd remind those in attendance this evening that if you'd like to speak during the public comment period, we've got a sign-in sheet towards the back, and we'd love to hear from you. So please take the time to complete that form, if you will. Next on the agenda is the adoption of the business meeting agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Next is consideration of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great, thank you, Mr. Anderson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Number 4 are matters from members of councils. Anyone have anything they'd like to share this evening? None? Okay, awesome. Great, thank you. I think, is it this weekend is the summer extravaganza?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
so just a reminder for folks, summer extravaganza. So this weekend, 2 days, starts on?
Yes, sir. Reformatted Friday evening and Saturday afternoon and evening.
Great, so I hope folks can come out and enjoy that. So a great event for all age groups. Number 5 is to consider reappointment of the city's charter officials, specifically the city manager, city assessor, and the clerk of council, and the city attorney. These appointments can be accomplished collectively or individually. Is there anyone that has an aversion to doing these collectively? So with that, I'd entertain a motion to reappoint the current officials, Mr. Hamp, Scaris, Ms. Bortle, Ms. Michelson, to the positions of city manager, city assessor, clerk of council, and city attorney respectively.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Great, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Congratulations. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Number 6 is to appoint an acting clerk of council to serve as may be required in the clerk's absence. So with that, we've had we did a short straw selection of staff members, and Mr. Hamp rose to the occasion. So is there a motion to name Mike Hamp as acting clerk?
I'll make that motion.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Congratulations again, Mr. Hamp. Number 7 is to consider introducing an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute the Shenandoah Valley Chief Elected Officials Consortium Agreement. Mr. Hamp.
So I'll call him, pardon me, Mr. Hitchin, to provide some introductory remarks.
Mr. Mayor, member of council, thank you very much for the opportunity tonight. The Shenandoah Valley Workforce Development Board is an important tool in our workforce development toolbox, providing a number of regional workforce-related services. So tonight we have a 2-part for you tonight. The first one will be a presentation by Ms. Jo Holland from the Workforce Development Board to give you a little bit of background over what that board is, maybe a success story or two, and then tonight we'll be asking you to consider introducing an ordinance to enter into a consortium agreement, which I'll come back to and talk about further after she gives her presentation.
Great, thank you.
Thank Thank you, Greg. I'm Sharon Johnson, the CEO for the Shenandoah Valley Workforce Development Board. And just to give a brief overview, you got the handout. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that's incorporated, and we are one of 15 local workforce boards in the state. Every locality in the state is part of a local workforce development board. We have funding through the U.S. Department of Labor, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, that is then allocated to the state by formula. Then the state allocates it to each of the local areas by formula. So that's how we operate the adult dislocated worker and youth programs that we operate throughout the 16 localities that we serve. We do have 3 Virginia Career Works centers, and that Virginia Career Works is a state brand. And we have one in Fishersville, one in Harrisonburg, and one in Winchester. In addition to those programs that are funded through that federal funding through WIOA, we also apply for and get as many discretionary grants as we possibly can. And we right now have a grant that's with the American Apprenticeship Initiative, in which we have almost 900 apprentices, new apprentices, that are brand new to registered apprenticeship in our service region, the majority of them being in the central part of our service region. So it would be the Augusta County, Waynesboro, Stanton, Harrisonburg, and Rockingham areas. We look at these programs as regional initiatives because businesses look for a workforce that's from a regional perspective. And right now, with the low unemployment rate, they look as far out as they can to get people to come in. So we're doing, Greg said it's something about a success story. We had a tremendous success story with Hershey, who hires from, they want to hire from the Augusta County, Waynesboro, and Stanton area. And we had a boot camp for them, a recruitment and retention boot camp. With the new line that they will be opening, they will be hiring approximately 300 people. We started that process, that's not only for the new line, but with those that will be retiring and through regular attrition. We started that process in June. We were able to screen for them 130 applicants after the assessments and all the initial upfront questioning and screening that went on. Then we got that went down from 130 to 30, and then they hired 24. So it is an intensive process. They are working with those 24 now on site, and they consider this a best practice model that they will be using within the Hershey system. With that, I'll turn it over to Joan Holland, who's going to talk about the Chief Elected Officials Consortium Agreement.
Hello, I'm Joan Holland. Thank you all for having me here today to talk a little bit about the board and the consortium. WIOA requires a Chief Elected Officials Consortium to oversee the workforce development boards, and the reason they do that is because they think that local government knows best what workforce services are needed in their area. So the purpose of the consortium is to engage the local governments in what we do, and you all actually have the responsibility of overseeing us. So that's why we have the consortium agreement. The state requires that the consortium have an agreement that outlines the responsibilities. And some of the responsibilities of the consortium are to designate a member jurisdiction to serve as the grant recipient for the WIOA funds, and Page County serves as the grant recipient, to receive nominations and make appointments to our board of directors. And each locality can appoint up to 3 private sector board members, and you all currently have 2. One of them is Carolyn Clark from Berry Plastics, and Samuel and Santa from Newman. And they're both really good board members. You're also responsible for our fiscal and program oversight, so that means we need to get your approval of our budget and approval of the local plan, and we develop a local plan for, it's a 4-year plan, and we develop that, and then we send it out to all the chief elected officials to review and give feedback before it goes to public comment. And then another thing is to act as a connection to workforce development and economic development, and that's why Greg is such a valuable part of being part of the elected officials consortium, because he's kind of feet on the ground economic development, and he's a good resource for us. So I'm glad to answer any questions you might have about the agreement. That's why we're here tonight, to see if we can answer any questions. We also I know one of the concerns of most localities is the issue of the liability, because the local governments have to accept the liability for their portion of the funding, and it's all done by formula through the state. And we have just upped our insurance to $4 million to cover malfeasance, misfeasance, and some other feasance. So that's well above what our annual allotment of WIOA funding is. So I hope that will help alleviate the concerns that you have about the liability. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Any questions of Joan? Okay, thank you so much.
So our guest described the program and the objective very well. So tonight, we're just asking you to introduce this ordinance, authorizing the mayor to sign this agreement in conjunction with the other 15 localities and make up the Shenandoah Valley Workforce Investment Board.
Any questions for Mr. Hitchin?
Is there any change, or is this the similar organization that we've been dealing with the last few years?
No change. Some change in the agreement that our city attorney has reviewed, but no change in the organization.
Great. Thank you
Okay.
very much. All right, so we've got a great presentation and appreciate the overview. Is there a motion to introduce the ordinance as presented?
I'll make that a motion.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, the ordinance this evening that's been introduced will be considered our July 22nd meeting. So again, appreciate your all's time and presentation. Thanks for all that you do.
If any questions come up, feel free to contact.
Will do. Thank you so much. All right, agenda item number 8 is to authorize the Department of Parks and Recreation to serve alcohol in Ridgeview Park in association with the Totally 80s AK race. Mr. Hamp.
This race will be conducted on August 17th this summer, and I think the request is self-explanatory. Council's approval is needed for that element of the event that involves the alcohol being served on public property.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? Is there a motion to approve the request and authorize the service and consumption of alcohol beverages in Ridgeview Park?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I am happy to second that, because
Great.
I'll be running.
All right, very good. And we will be watching. All right, is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 9 is to consider appointing a candidate to the Disability and Aging Board for Independence to serve the disabled community for an unexpired 4-year term ending June 30th, 2021. Mr. David Sokol is presented for consideration. Is there a motion to appoint Mr. Sokol to the Disability and Aging Board for Independence?
I'll make the motion.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Sokol, for his volunteerism and commitment to support that organization. Number 10 is to consider appointing a candidate to the Historical Commission for an unexpired 4-year term ending August 31st, 2021. Ms. Shannon McGuffin is presented for consideration. Is there a motion to appoint Ms. McGuffin to the Historical Commission?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Welcome aboard, Ms. McGuffin. Thank you. Number 11 is to consider appointing a city council member to the Parks and Recreation Commission to serve as the council liaison for a 1-year period ending June 30th, 2021. Is there a motion to reappoint Dr. Hostetter?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, very good.
I'll second.
Very good. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 12 is communication correspondence. Mr. Hamp.
I don't have anything this evening, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right. 13 is citizen comment. Period. I'll just wait. Spore like returns.
There's 15 people signed.
Thank you. Ms. Francine Johnson.
Ms. Johnson, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and record and address for the record, please.
Francine Johnson, 409 Beta Street, Waynesboro, Virginia. But I attend St. James Baptist Church. Mr. Hamp, did two ladies come to your office and talk to you about bears in our community out there? McGuffin?
Two ladies came and asked about a yard sale. I'm not
Okay,
sure that they
okay.
spoke, and I didn't speak directly with them. I
Okay.
wasn't aware that the bears came
Yeah.
up in their
We have a
conversation.
bear problem in Moppintown. And one night when the choir was returning, I think last Tuesday night, the bear was spotted near the church. And of course, it scares people. Yesterday morning before church, it was in trash cans. And we have children playing out there, children in the community. An older lady with dementia, Miss Marie, we've told her several times, Miss Marie, we have bears. And I am here tonight to see what is the law. Is there a law? Because I hear rumors of people wanting to shoot it, and I feel sorry for the bears. You know, they're looking for food. So is there a law? If the police is called, will they do anything? What is up with the bears? Can anybody tell me?
Well, yeah, I think we can certainly provide a response, and I think that's fine. I just want to make sure that, or do you have any other questions that you'd like to have answered?
Well, I want to know what can be done. I don't want to wait till someone's mauled and then the police come. It's too late.
Right, right.
So is there a law against them? Can they be taken back to the wildlife place? We've cited the father, the mother, and 2 cubs.
Sure.
And it's becoming a problem. And it's scary. And I'm too big to be running from some bears.
Right.
And I can't climb a tree. So what do we do? Where do we stand? If there was one at First Baptist Church, what would you do?
Right.
What would you do? Mr. Short, if you saw a bear at First Baptist Church,
Well,
what would you do?
I think it's one of the beautiful things about living at the foothills of Shenandoah National Park and the Blue Ridge Parkway is the fact that we live adjacent to a very robust and sustainable bear population. It's certainly increasingly as our population sort of increases, folks, I think we've had some conversations as recent as even last summer about we actually I think improved. We had some specific communication that went out to citizens of things that you should or should not do to contain garbage and lock
And their
away, maybe only put out the
exercise
garbage out,
yeah.
at certain times of when pickup's getting ready to happen. And sort of those best practices. I think our police department and a Facebook post this week and our Parks and Rec department through social media also released sort of a best practices for that. And I would certainly ask Mr. Hamp if you wouldn't mind to sort of the Wildlife Center. They've also produced some mediums that we can communicate that out of some best practices that we could all use as citizens to.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries has an excellent website, and they actually also have a hotline that you can call to record a bear encounter. I think, unfortunately, to kind of work through your question more specifically, it's illegal to discharge a firearm in the city. So if any citizen who took it upon themselves to shoot a bear would be violating the law. Honestly, our local government doesn't do anything to trap or shoot or manage wildlife in that regard. If officers are available, they will come and try to preserve order, encourage safety. Similarly, the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries does very little trapping, shooting, relocating. We had occasion to speak with a representative of the agency, and as the mayor alluded to, you're really just shuffling bears around in a valley that it's not, they're going to return, and what they're seeking is the food source. And in my experience in the community, there was a time when we had more common bear problem on the perimeter of the city adjacent to wooded or forested areas. Now, this summer, we've received reports of bears in Club Court, bears in the Country Club, bears in tree streets. And so it really is, you can imagine the enormous challenge it is to tell a community to eliminate all sources and odors of food associated with either pet food or garbage. So that's a long-winded way of saying that we really rely on our citizenry to be well-educated and to exercise caution and safety, and that you can't rely for resource and for authority under the law for either the local police department or the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries to respond to a call and eliminate the threat. It's very much a preventative, exercising personal safety and trying to discourage bears from penetrating into a community and wandering and foraging for food in trash cans or in pet houses, gardens, etc. And I know that's a frustrating answer for our residents to hear, but that is the truthful and direct answer to the question.
And if I might add,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
probably the same bear that was at your church. Her and her 2 cubs were in my front yard. I have pictures and video of it. It's either Thursday or Friday night. And it's not the first time we've seen them. And the News Virginian had an excellent article last week, and I'll try to find a copy for you and bring it to you. That front page about the bears and trying to educate people what to do and what not to do along the food source. And so many people, as we know, like to feed the squirrels and the birds, and that's just what the bears want to eat. And so they come down, and my neighbors have had some very expensive bird feeders just pushed right over to the ground, and they complain. I say, well, the bears, like, you're putting the food out here to feed me, you know. So, but I watched children following the bears down the street on their bicycles, and I talked to a couple of the parents and told them, you may want to educate your children. They're not a toy and not something for entertainment. They ought to go in the other direction, especially when they have the cubs with them. But it's a real good article, and gives a lot of history on what bears will and will not do when they come into contact with people. So I'll bring it to you. Maybe you could share it with everybody at the church.
Yeah.
And we have, like I said, as our church, as far as keeping the trash in the trash cans and that sort of thing, they are working on that. But I just wanted to know legally, and they did too, some others are supposed to be here, what do we do, and if there's anything that can be done? And we don't want to wait until one attacks. You don't know what they're going to do. They're not trained pets. They're wild. And if they would hurt somebody, what would you do? And we don't want to wait until that happens. We're seeing too many, and we're seeing them on a regular basis. And thank you for listening.
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking the question. And I know it's a bit of a departure from what we would normally do in a public comment period, but I know I've seen the question being raised, and I think to the point of, I don't know if there are more bears than there were 20 years ago walking around Waynesboro, but we certainly have a much more robust way of how we all communicate with one another. So I think at some level, that may be sort of at within arm's reach a little bit, as well as that we hear it. I mean, I know that those bears walking in front of Mr. Allen's house were probably the same bears and their cubs walking 2 blocks from my house down the river. So,
Well, Mr. Mayor, we might be able to get the chief of police and put some bear bait on the back of his vehicle, and he could kind of ride around and maybe coax them out.
yeah, there we go.
Back up to the woods or
Yeah,
something.
it'd be like the Pied Piper of bears. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ms. Shanda McGuffin.
Ms. McGuffin, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you.
Can y'all hear me? I'm only 5 feet tall. I'm Chanda McGuffin. I am 644 Edwardian Lane here in Waynesboro. I wanted to follow up with the last time I was here. I talked with you about Port Republic Road, Florence Avenue, and one thing that we really need in the community is transparency, and we need follow-up. When we come to city council and speak at city council, you all do not respond. That is one of your rules. You don't respond to the citizen. However, you're not responding at all. I've talked with Terry, Mayor Short, and I've talked with Dr. Hosstetter, but I really want what I asked for to be taken seriously. We have pushed the can down the road. You all might be talking, you all might have some kind of plan, but you're not communicating that plan. And so it's very important that we do not lose sight of what I originally asked for. Because really, you all started this conversation when you had the community meeting at Rosenwall for that area. So the conversation started there. But we still have the money on the table. You all are talking about renewing that 5-year grant for the next 5 years. All this kind of stuff is still being talked about, but still the money needs to be allocated correctly, and it has to be appropriated to the right places. And Port Republic Road and Florence Avenue keeps being overlooked. I know you're doing a little patchwork, but it's not enough. You cannot see an effect to that area. With Port Republic Road as one of the historical districts in the area, it looks nothing like the other 2 historical districts. It is run down. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. So I'm gonna keep coming back, I'm gonna keep talking, I'm gonna keep standing up, because you all are not taking it seriously to say, let's sit down and let's have a plan of action for that area. And it needs to be taken care of, because it hasn't been taken care of for years. Thank you.
Great. All right, anyone else this evening?
No, sir.
All right. So with that, we'll close meeting on.
Mr. Mayor, I move to recess into a closed meeting in order to consult with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provisions of legal advice by the attorney and about probable litigation. Where such consultation or briefing in an open meeting would adversely affect the city's negotiating or litigating posture, as authorized by Section 2.2-3711A7 and 8 of the Code of Virginia. The subject of this meeting and the litigation is nuisance litigation and the opioid litigation.
Great, thank you. So we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I think this requires a roll call vote. Ms. Bortle?
Mayor Short.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Henderson.
Aye.
Councilman Allen. Councilman Hofstadter.
Aye.
Okay, we are in closed session. Thank you.
respect of the just concluded closed session, and to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempt from the open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and 2, only such business matters as were defined in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, considered in the meeting by City Council.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. So it requires a roll call.
Mayor Short.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Henderson.
Aye.
Councilman Allen. Councilman Hostetter.
Aye.
We're back in session. Other business item I'd like to add as a consequence to our meeting as to looking for a motion to enter into the second phase of litigation previously discussed related to the opioid epidemic.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I'd like to recuse myself from this particular vote.
Okay, thank you. With the motion properly seconded, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And one recusal. Thank you. So with that, look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Oh, you didn't.